Hey guys, what's up? It's Stacking Chairs, the youth ministry podcast all about serving in youth ministry. Whether it be youth group or youth camp, whatever God has you serving in, that's what we're talking about. I'm one of your hosts, Josh Paul Hamas. I'm joined by my fellow host and good friend,
Kyle Gray. Josh, man, today just feels fresh.
It does.
It feels like it has been 6 months since we recorded our last episode.
Yes.
But for these people, it's 2 weeks.
Yeah, it's only been 2 weeks since you've seen your last episode. There's been so much that's really happened and changed. The episodes are, for us, it feels like, oh man, this is fresh. But we know from an outside, it feels like kind of a meta.
Can I say it this way, Josh? It's kind of like the difference between when we watched TV shows.
Oh yeah.
And when people watch TV shows now. You still have to wait for the next season.
Yeah.
But
binge the whole show.
But also, if you wait long enough, you can just watch all 3 seasons right away.
Yeah.
And some of you have done that. We are on episode, is it 81 right now?
No, we're past that. I don't know what the number is.
The only reason why I say that is because I noticed the one with Eric Gill was episode 80. Was episode 80.
Yeah, but there's more episodes. That's it. So guys, full disclosure. There's a whole queue of episodes. We're recording when we can, and then from our producer, thank you to our producer who is now able to go through Caleb and put these episodes out when they come out.
Yeah,
building resources for you guys that come along with it and show notes.
I think we're far enough down. We're past Q. I think we're into R now, right?
R
S T L V U W X Y Z Q.
Numbers are hard for me.
Hey, do you do that? If I was to say what letter comes after M, do you have to go through the whole alphabet before you get there?
It depends. Sometimes I know right off the top of my head. So I know N is after M.
Yeah.
Give me another letter, just out of curiosity. I'm curious if
J.
I do that. K. No, I know. I know them. I was right off the top of my head, I think.
T.
No, maybe not.
Hey!
T. U. Yeah. But I had to go. I think there's like chapters, almost like in a book.
L M N O P Q R T U.
Yeah. I think there's like
Q-U-R-T.
chapters in my head in the alphabet that like jump ahead or behind.
Hey, Josh, can I say this?
Uh-huh.
If I could rearrange the alphabet, I'd put you and I. You were going to say you and me? There is no letter me.
Letter me? Yeah, you don't know letter me?
Yeah. Hey, just to give you a little fair notice, we are not in summer camp season, but we are in winter conference season.
There's always some kind of season happening at Word of Life. If you don't know Word of Life,
where have you been?
We're like the biggest organization.
Yeah.
There's always something happening at Word of Life. There's either conferences happening, there's the Bible Institute happening ongoing throughout the year, summer camp, winter camp, events. I mean, there's always something happening at Word of Life.
And so right now in the other room, a concert is about to start practicing.
And probably going to start here soon.
But you know what? Hey, bottom line, just think of it as elevator mood music. One time,
it's
gosh,
horns,
probably,
though. I don't know
probably
if
the greatest time I was singing special music, and the special music song I was singing was "He's Alive" by Fernando Ortega. I think is the guy's name.
I don't know that.
Bottom line, it was just fun to say.
Yeah.
Anyways, so right now we are getting ready to get into Pursuit Camp or Winter Camp, and so we will have some of our speakers that we will do these episodes with. Really, really excited about some of them that are, well, all of them, but some of them that are coming in.
Some of them repeats and
some of them are repeats. Can I tell you, that probably is one of the hardest things, because there are some guys that I bring in and I'm just like, oh, I would love to have them every single year. But you also want to try out new people. And kind of build I never have enough speaking opportunities for all of you. I don't. I'm sorry.
But eventually, everybody, there's always that chance. Camp's going to be going on for generations.
And not only that, but intersect camps are starting.
Yeah.
So this year alone, we're going to do, 2025, we're going to do 3 weekends in Ohio, 2 weekends in California, and 1 weekend in New Hampshire. But next year, 2026, we're already slotted to do 3 weekends in California, 2 weekends in Ohio, 2 weekends in Michigan, and 1 weekend in New Hampshire.
Yeah, so we have the addition there. That's going to be pretty cool.
It's going to be fantastic.
Pretty cold, actually. I mean, Michigan's
Hey, you should go with them. You should go with the team.
To Michigan?
Yeah.
I've never been to Michigan.
Never?
No.
Josh, I would love to add a state to your list.
I'm hoping that the Lions win the Super Bowl. By the time this comes out, the Super Bowl will be way past. So if the Lions won the Super Bowl, you know I'm excited. Yeah. And I called it.
Yeah. And if they didn't win, but the commercials are great, I'm excited.
Yeah. Well, if they don't win, then I want the Bills to win. And if the Bills don't win, I don't want anybody to win.
Wow.
Because I can't stand the Chiefs or the Ravens.
I'm not going to say who I can't stand, but I'm right there with you.
Is it me? Oh, right there with me is what I.
Yeah. Hey, I am also rereading through a book, and
before you get in, because I know we were going to talk about, but I want to hear like, what are you up to now? Because I mean,
that's what I was going to tell you. I'm.
Oh, that's what you're going to. Yeah.
Oh, okay. I was going to say to you, like,
I wanted to ask as well.
No, thank you. This has been on my mind for the last couple days.
Okay.
Somebody quoted, the book is A Tale of Three Kings by Gene Edwards. I highly recommend it. There is no perfect book outside of the Bible, so take the meat, leave the bones. But there's a lot of meat in there.
Yeah.
It's different because he writes the story of David of Saul and David and Absalom and David alone, as kind of like or like the angels watching it. So he does fill in some different things. Yeah. So
kind
every
of
once in a while,
approach, except not demons.
But he says this, chapter 5 of Tale of Three Kings. God has a university. It's a small school. Few enroll and even fewer graduate. Very, very few indeed. God has this school because he does not have broken men. Instead, he has several other types of men. He has men who claim to be God's authority and aren't. Men who claim to be broken and aren't. And men who are God's authority and who are mad and unbroken. He has, regretfully, a spectroscopic mixture of everything in between. All of these he has in abundance, but broken men, hardly at all. In God's sacred school of submission and brokenness, why are there so few students? Because all who are in this school must suffer much pain. And as you might have guessed, it is often the unbroken ruler whom God sovereignly picks, who meets out, or whatever, METES, meets out the pain. David was once a student in this school, and Saul was God's chosen way to crush David. And as the king grew in madness, David grew in understanding. He knew that God had placed him in the king's palace under true authority. The authority of King Saul, true? Yes. God's chosen authority, chosen for David. Unbroken authority? Yes. But divine in ordination, nonetheless. Yes, that is possible. David drew his breath in, placed himself under this mad king, and moved farther down the path from this earthly hell. And I'm sitting there going like, there are definitely times where I am so frustrated with the circumstances that God has allowed me to walk through.
Yeah.
And I forget that that's a part of God's schooling for me, ordained for my good.
Yeah.
But it's not just about me. I do believe that there's different times that God grabs a hold of that leader. But you can learn really good lessons from bad leadership and bad examples.
Oh, absolutely.
And you and I have talked about, mostly off camera, and some of the frustrations and some of the things that we walk through.
Yeah.
And I genuinely, listen, we've said this before, you need a place that you can speak honestly and openly, and somebody who's going to love you enough to listen to you, but also love you enough to go, And there's been quite a few times where you and I have had different perspectives on things. Sure. And I so appreciate that. But man, that idea of, God, I trust your timing and I trust your schooling. But oh man, I don't know about you. Sometimes it's so easy to be frustrated with the circumstances. And
that was actually my prayer this morning, ironically enough.
Really?
Driving into work this morning. It's related still, I guess. It's more of like not circumstances of like leadership or anything like that, but more circumstances that God just puts into your life to use. I found myself praying for the neighborhoods as I drove to work, that God would use me or the people around me to reach them with the gospel, no matter what means necessary. And so this is what the emotional part, at least for me, is we have a girl in our youth group. Her dad had an unfortunate health situation. He had a stroke and then found out he had cancer as a result of that stroke just a couple weeks ago. And the first thing I think is, selfishly, because I'm really a selfish person, just like everybody, I suppose, is that, what if I were in that situation and that happened to me? What would I do for my kids? And that's where I started praying instead of like, Lord, I hope you never put me through that. There was a part of that prayer there as well. But I said, Lord, if you would put me through something of that similar nature, that you would use it for these neighborhoods. And then I started to pray. Yeah. And I think that whole that you're thinking of it from the perspective of like, oh, well, God used this person to, and I think in that same respect of like, well, what if God used circumstances like health or even people, but like posturing ourselves of, I say, God, please don't give me those things, honestly. But Lord, if you do, that I would use them for your glory.
I had a dad one time come up to Nicola and I, my wife Nicola, and she shared her testimony about how God took her to the Bible Institute, allowed her to meet me. She had a full plan to go to the Bible Institute and then go to Cedarville University and get her degree in banking and finance and then go back to Bermuda and on and on and on.
Yeah.
And how God rearranged her plan. She always had kind of a desire in the back of her head of like, man, how cool would it be to be somebody in ministry's wife and to be involved in ministry and be connected to it. But never really thought that would actually happen.
Sure.
And she shared her testimony and walked through it. It was at her home church, but for youth ministry leaders.
Okay.
And a dad came up to us afterwards and he goes, I realize now what I've held from my children. And we said, okay. And he said, I watched you go to Bible college. I watched you fall in love with Kyle. I watched you have a heart for ministry and I watched you to go down that road. And I thought for years, oh, how unfortunate she could have made a lot of money and could have had a better life.
Wow.
He said, and I literally would pray, God, do not call my kids into ministry. God, do not call my kids in ministry. God, do not. He said, and I realize now listening to the joy that you're talking about and looking at my kids who at this point now don't want anything to do with God or the church.
Oh, man.
And I feel like I influenced my kids to walk away from Jesus.
Wow. That is like palpably terrible to consider.
But what you're talking about is the other side of God. Am I willing to trust you if you allowed? I've thought the same thing. I've thought, God, I know I love you, but if you decided to take one of my kids, you know,
as a parent, that
and
is.
could I work? I mean, could I work through it? Sure.
Yeah.
But not in my worst nightmares do I ever want to honestly consider that. And yet there are people that are out there that go through that and we have all the right biblical answers for them. For the thing that we haven't experienced.
Oh yeah.
But oh man,
it's so easy to go through scripture and just like find all the answers, but to actually consider what it means to you. Actually, I mean, even the idea, something as simple as we say, be a living sacrifice. Have you ever considered what it means to be a living sacrifice? Like to actually give up your life and be willing? If you actually consider what it means to love God more than, I mean, think of the challenges Jesus gave to people when they would come up. He didn't say, they say, oh, Jesus, I'm unwilling to give up this thing. He didn't go, oh, that's fine. Like, yeah, just like, you can keep some of this and then come along. I mean, look at the crowds after he feeds the 5,000 and then they come around and they're like, he's like, you don't want, those who drink of my blood and eat of my flesh are ready to follow me. The rest of you just want food. Get lost. Like Jesus wasn't seeker friendly. Have we considered what it looks like to be ready to actually sacrifice our life? And I think it falls into all this really easily. Like there are so many pieces of what scripture says where it's like, yeah, we know the right answer, but to actually live that out and really consider what it means for you is heavy.
It takes you back to that age-old question. None of us want to have to give our lives for Christ.
Yeah.
But God isn't asking us to give our lives once. He's asking us to daily give our lives, which is actually the tougher call.
Oh, sure.
You know, I really believe, I really believe if somebody walked in here and put a gun to my head and said, like, confess Jesus or die, I really believe I would go, shoot me.
Yes.
But then how hard is it for me every single day to get up and choose Jesus over Kyle Gray?
Yeah. It's I feel like we're kind of like going, guys, we're going to rein it all in because there's something that like, there's a takeaway of all this thought process. So don't worry, we're getting there.
You're like, I read the description. And
Yeah,
this is
this
not.
doesn't
We're getting somewhere.
We're getting
okay?
there, okay?
There is method in our madness.
Yeah. All right. Calm down. Jeez. Stop yelling at the radio.
If you're yelling, number one, if we're on the radio, radio has tanked so bad that
Radio's doing tough.
Whew.
Who's listening to the radio anymore, honestly? I do sometimes in the morning, I guess, but I forgot what I was going to say next. We can get to the topic then, I guess.
Well, so honestly, here's...
Got so caught up in chastising
the daily death over the one-time death.
Yeah, there was a takeaway for it, which I think was, it's the way that we there was a quote my associate pastor sent. He said he found it somewhere, but it's like the spiritual disciplines that we follow aren't to make us more precious to God. It's to make God more precious to us.
Oh, absolutely.
And so like every time that I'm like, oh man, I'm struggling with this sin or this posture, or this idea or this like mindset or cynicism or other things that I struggle with on a regular basis, anger, like how do I fight against those? It's not by like don't think about pink elephants mindset of like, I'm constantly thinking about how do I get away from this? It's instead clinging to Christ and continuing to spend time in the Word. And I feel like I'm spending more time in the Word than I ever have before. And every time I feel like, I'm stagnant, I think of, okay, what is the other principle that I can think of? Or what's the other attribute of God I can focus on?
Yeah.
And I feel like I grow as a result.
Yeah, sometimes I think, and I've said this quote for years, but I've tried to make sure that it's actually still true in my life and not just something that I say. But sometimes I can fall more in love with the way that I'm pursuing God than the God that I'm pursuing.
Yeah. You know? Absolutely.
Even last night at youth group, to take a step closer to what we're going to talk about.
Yeah. People are like, oh, I see that in the description. We're good. We're getting there.
I had one of my boys. We were teaching through a lesson on Ephesians, and we talked about how God has chosen us, God has adopted us, God has given us an inheritance and a promise, and those beautiful truths in the beginning of Ephesians. And at the end of it, I knew this was going to be a topic of conversation. But a kid comes up to me and he goes, "How many points of tulip are you?"
Oh no!
And
right off the bat.
And I said, why are you more worried about man's organization of God's truth rather than just obsessing yourself with God's truth?
Yeah.
Here's the deal. I don't think he was being snarky, but I was like, I'm not even gonna get into that. And but again, I think there are sometimes I don't think there's anything wrong with our organization of God's truth.
Nothing wrong with defining terms.
I don't think there's anything wrong with that. In fact, we need men like Luther and Calvin and all those different, like all on the spectrum.
Yeah.
Okay. I said the other night at youth group, I said, I don't care if you're an Arminianist or a Calvinist. Make sure you're more in love with God and His word than man's organization of God's word. I do care if they are.
Sure.
You know,
no, there's still something.
But again, I think there are some times that all these different things, Satan can get us to fall in love, to draw away, to fall in love with something outside of God's word and God's movement. Even sometimes I comfort myself more with a speaker's saying.
Sure.
Than a verse of scripture. You know?
It reminds me of that joke. You ever seen the joke where the guy talks about it? He's like, two men walk down the street and they greet each other, and he's like, "Oh, I'm a Baptist." He goes, "Oh, he's like, are you Protestant or Catholic?" So I'm Protestant. He goes, "Oh, I'm also Protestant." Yeah. You heard that joke?
Yeah.
They get to Baptist and they go down and he's like, "Oh, which council are you from?" And he gets to the end. He's like, "Well, which group are you? Are you Southern Baptist or Northern? Whatever. I can't remember."
And he says the other one, and he's like, "You die like a dog."
He's like, "Die, heretic." Yeah. I mean, you're right. That's so easy to get down that path. That is a sidebar. Fair point, audience. That was a sidebar.
Right. But here's the deal. So I brought that up because that's one of the things I'm gonna go through that. I want to read it again.
Yeah.
But I want to go through that book with one of the guys in my youth group.
The Three Kings one. You're referencing.
Tale of Three Kings. It's an easy book. It's a great lesson on leadership.
Yeah. I knew that it was at least an easy reading level if I'm
reading it. Yeah. Well, I literally just read the whole chapter to you when I read
really?
the
whole chapter?
Yeah.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah. Listen, he does it like anyways.
Yeah, I like books like that.
Especially ones that have coloring pages in them, right?
Yeah, the ones with the coloring books. My daughter brings home these really hard books sometimes.
Erwin Lutzer every year tells the joke. He's like, "Hey, you have to pray for Kyle because his library was flooded and he lost 53 of his most prized prized books in his possession." And the sad thing is he had only colored in 2 of the pages. Like, every time he says it, I'm like, ugh. Anyway, so I'm going to go through that book myself. Then and can I tell you, Josh, one of the things now that I am in my second season of an interimship, is to get to know every single one of these guys in the youth group. I started with the older, the seniors, the juniors, and just kind of working my way through. And I take them all out for a cup of coffee or for a lunch. And I just interact with them and ask them questions all the way from, hey, how did you come to know Christ as your personal Savior? Tell me about that. Walk me through that. I then share mine, how I came to know Christ. What is God teaching you right now?
Yeah.
And then I always get to the point of saying, hey, and I say, I'm gonna ask you this later, so be thinking about it. I would love to know, what ideas do you have of how we could improve youth group? And is there anything that I'm not doing for you that you would like me to do for you? I'm not saying I'm going to do everything you want me to do, but to do that. Now, Josh, I know that you also meet with some different guys, but what you're going to talk about is a little bit of the next step level of doing discipleship.
Well, that's what I was curious. So Nice.
Yeah.
So you're not talking about discipleship. You're talking about just a single one-on-one meeting to say, okay,
Hey, tell me about how are you?
Yeah.
How's it going? I mean, I even ask him like how do you think things are going? And can I be honest with you? Not every one of them are like, you're the greatest guy in the world. This is absolutely
Sure.
fantastic. And some of them I kind of have to coax like, hey, you're not going to hurt my feelings. It does.
Yeah.
It really does.
Yeah.
But you're not going to hurt
kids in the youth group, or
kids,
these are like
kids in the
leaders?
youth group. Yep.
Okay, and how many have you done it with so far?
I think I'm through my 8th one,
Okay.
7th, 8th one.
Yeah,
So yeah.
that's super cool. How many out of how many, like percentage-wise? How far are you along?
Well, I'm about halfway through the guys.
Okay.
What's
What's the plan for the girls then?
Well, so I walked out of one of the Sunday school rooms. We do large group, style teaching from the platform on Sunday morning. And then the last half an hour, 20, 30 minutes is small groups to kind of talk through different things, unless for some reason the guy preaches long and then they go like 15, 20 minutes. I don't know who that is, but I walked out of the room one of the days with the guys, and I was talking to one of them specifically and saying, all right, hey, so when this week can we get together? And I watched 2 of the senior girls kind of look at me like, are you serious? And so I walked up to him and I said, hey, I don't want you to feel loved less.
Yeah.
But you absolutely are loved.
I said,
I'm not going to go out one-on-one with you.
No,
I then looked at 2 of them and I was like, I don't even know how that would look if I took the 2 of you out.
Yeah.
I said, but I would like to hear, because I want them to have a voice.
Of course.
And I think they need to have that voice.
What's your strategy? Like,
I have no idea right now.
You're not sure yet?
I don't know.
Well, because I mean, like, people are kind of thinking, they're hearing this idea like, oh, I've never really considered taking out kids one-on-one.
Well,
really
here's what I know. I know that some of you out there that are full-time youth pastors, and even some of you out there that are not full-time youth pastors, you're like, yeah, I do that every month. I know some guys that every month take out, whether it's just the seniors or it's the juniors and seniors, or depending on the size of their group and their time and their budget, all of the guys.
Yeah.
And I know that a lot of guys have then tasked out a lady in their ministry to take out the girls.
Yeah, I was going to say that seems like it would be an easy way to
And I do think that is important. At the same time, I do think that there is something specific and special about being able to sit down with the youth pastor.
Yeah, sure.
And be able to share with them. But it is. But let me be absolutely clear. I do not think it would be wise under any circumstances for you, married or unmarried youth pastor, to go out with one of your high school girls to even have good, godly conversation.
Yeah,
don't put yourself in a stupid place.
You'd think that would be obvious.
You'd think
that'd be obvious.
And yet at the same time, there's a reason why we have to say that.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
Well, but I also know that there are other guys that they're like, I don't do that every month, but I might do it once a year. I also know, listen, there's some of you right now, you're kicking yourself because you're like, I've never done that. Don't worry about it. It's okay.
Yeah, just something to consider.
At some point, you have to hear a new idea, and it's all right.
Yeah.
But what do you do with your...
Well, so I'm kind of in a spot where I'm there was a youth leader who I was connecting with and doing discipleship with. And then there's like some kids in the youth group as well who I'm doing discipleship with. And I won't say out of that group who this was, but there was somebody who I was meeting with, and it felt like I'd be like, okay, like what are some things we can work through? What are some things we can talk through? I didn't do the thing you're like, hey, what are some things that you like about the youth group and all that? It was more of just on that.
Well, you're not
personal level.
Matt.
No.
Just to make sure we mention him in every episode.
He'll be here for one of the conference. He's going to come, I think, to hear Ray. So you should say hi. Anyway.
Can we have him on the podcast?
We should, yeah. Well, he's an associate pastor now, so he has time.
Oh, he's out of our level. He knows nothing about student ministry now.
Yeah, he's done.
Put a fork in him.
So, but there was one guy who I was meeting with on a regular basis, and, it's like, okay, let's talk about this. And it felt like every time I talked to him about something, there was always a reason why, like, it's like, okay, well, here's my advice on this, or here's what scripture says. It's like, there was always a reason why they did something. There was always an excuse. Yeah. I was trying to avoid the word excuse. Yeah. But there was always an excuse. Yeah. And it got to a point where it's like, okay, well, even with meeting times, it's like, okay, well, listen, this is my schedule. Here's how inflexible I have with my schedule. I would still like to meet with you. Can you find flexibility in your schedule? Mm-hmm. And I will try and find flexibility. And we'll both compromise. Mm-hmm. And the answer was like, well, no, I can't compromise. Like it was basic. They didn't say that, but that. So I got to a point where I had to say, okay, I'm actually going to have to stop meeting with this person on a regular basis because it's just, I felt like there was maybe someone else, maybe someone older, who maybe could speak into that more.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of what I've been working through. That's not related to this topic really at all.
But it is in a sense. I've got another guy that actually I met at the first church that I was working with.
Okay.
I met him in the Sunday school class before I was the interim youth pastor.
Yeah.
And he just said, "Hey, could we go out? Could we go out like once a month or once every 2 weeks? Could we?" And then while we were there, I said, "You want to go through a book or something?" So check this out. This was probably one of my favorite things, and totally like not designed by Kyle Gray.
Yeah.
Somebody else said, "Hey, would you go out to lunch with me? Hey, could we do this again? Hey, could we do this a third time? Hey, could we do this a fourth time?"
Yeah.
And then I said, "Do you want to like talk through a book?" And he said, "Yeah." So we decided to go through the Pursuit of God.
Yeah.
We went through the whole book of the Pursuit of God. We got to the end of that one. And during that time of going through with that one guy, another guy said, "Hey, do you want to do lunch sometime?" While meeting with that second guy, I said to him, "Hey, I meet with this guy, Brian, and we're about done with this one book. Do you want to meet with us?" But here's the deal. If you meet with us, we do like a Bible book, or not a Bible book study, but a biblical book study.
Yeah.
And he was like, "Oh, absolutely." So the three of us went through a book.
Yeah.
At the end of, I think, 2 other books,
Yeah.
the first guy, Brian, said to Andy and I now, "Hey, I've got this friend Dan who works with me.
Oh, cool.
Could he come?" And so then the 4 of us started can I tell you, it was absolutely one of my favorite, because it was just 4 dads from completely different walks of life.
Yeah.
But I sat there and I thought, that's what I want to do with these youth kids.
Yeah.
You know?
Leading a youth ministry can feel like a balancing act on a tightrope. You're crafting sermons, planning small groups, coordinating events, and trying to keep parents informed, all while hoping to make a meaningful connection with your students. It can be exhausting. What if there was a way to lighten that load? Word of Life Youth Ministries is offering a free youth group series that's packed with resources to save you time and deepen your relationships with your students. Each lesson includes comprehensive teaching notes, small group guides, and thought-provoking discussion starters. The Parent Connect feature keeps parents engaged without adding extra work for you. And the best part? It all comes together in the Multiply app, where you can track your students' spiritual journeys and reward their progress. Imagine spending less time buried in prep work and more time mentoring your students, attending their school functions, or just being available when they need to talk to someone. Don't let the administrative tasks steal the joy of ministry from you. Check out the link in the show notes and grab your free curriculum now. Your students are waiting for you to show up fully present.
And again, I want to have an agenda, but I don't want to have an agenda.
Yeah.
You know, I want to be able to get in. And I said to the kid today, the young man that I met with today, is one of the ministers at the church. He's one of the sons of the ministers. And I said, "Hey, let me be absolutely clear with you. I am not getting together with you because you're the son of one of the ministers here. And at the same time, I am getting together with you because you're one of the sons of the ministers here.
Yeah.
I'm not getting together with you just because I'm the youth pastor. But as that role, I think you have a valued voice, and I just want to get to know you, and I want to hear from you."
Yeah.
They actually, this family was serving at another church, and then they stopped serving for a while.
Yeah.
And then the dad, I think, was like, "Dude, I need to get back in ministry." And so now he's back over. Now he's over at our church.
Oh, cool.
And ministering. And again, I just want to know, hey, where are you in your walk with Christ?
Yeah.
A buddy of mine named Dan Fan. I don't think we've ever had Dan on the show.
That'd be
have
a
we?
fun one to have on the show. No,
Dan
he
would
hasn't
do
been on
great.
before.
But Dan, I heard Dan ask this question in an interview process. He said, "Okay, tell me where you are in your walk with Christ. Are you closer than you've ever been to him? Are you about as close as you've always been with him? Are you, because of circumstances or hardships or just schedule, trying to catch back up with him? Or do you feel like he's so far ahead of you, you don't even know if he remembers that you were with him in the first place?" And I thought, what a beautiful way, especially the first 3, any of those, like, oh, because you always feel bad, like, I'm not as close. Well, and he almost gives you the excuse because of schedule or broken hurt or whatever. I need to catch back up with him.
Yeah, that's
but
good.
I thought, man, what? And so I asked the student today, and can I tell you, without missing a moment, kid said, "Well, let me be honest with you. I've really kind of gotten a little and he didn't use this word, but I've gotten a little prideful in my walk with Christ. And I went to a winter retreat a little bit ago, and I sat there and I went in and was like, I don't really need to hear anything. He was like, and the minute the guy started speaking, God was like, hey,
Yeah.
I'm talking to you. And he just, man, it was so beautiful to watch this young man get excited.
Yeah.
And but I thought just the humility.
Yeah.
In our first kind of connection point. I mean, I've known this kid for at this point, a couple months now, like really known him. I've known him for a couple years.
Yeah.
But very, very, more distant. And it's been interesting. Some of these kids, some of these students, these teens, are ready to share. When I say, hey, what would you improve at youth group? Let me tell you what I would improve in youth group.
Yeah,
I would
they have a list.
I remember there was this one guy, we do this thing called the student service squad. Everybody has something else, call whatever. But he said, I was a part of that group, and then I didn't like the way that it was being organized. And I said, okay. I said, well, if we change it, would you come back? I'll think about it. And I said, hey, and I just looked at him and I said, thanks for being honest.
Sure.
Thanks for being honest.
Yeah.
But I just want to get to know them.
Yeah. What's it look like to initiate those conversations, especially are you meeting with just 18 and 17 and 16-year-olds?
Right now, yes.
Okay,
right now,
so
yes.
that's a little bit easier.
But I always try to also make sure that I connect with the parents too.
Yeah, that was my question.
We've
always talked about that.
Yeah. There's only been one lunch that I've done so far.
Yeah.
But I had to check the kid out of the school.
Oh, okay.
So I had to go through the school, and every single one of them, I would always say, hey, I'm going to do my goal is to do this. I've already connected with Josh and Dylan and Robert. I was going to say Sarah, but I've not met with girls. I've already met with them.
Yeah.
My goal is to meet one-on-one with every single one of you.
Yeah.
At some point. So I need you to make sure that that's okay. I need you to make sure that you connect with your parents, and that these two brothers, I met with one of them today. I went and talked to their parents. Hey, I would really like to do this. Are you okay?
Yeah.
Because as the newest people to the church, I thought, hey, let me make sure I make myself,
that's wise. Yeah, because even, you're being prudent, not taking out girls one-on-one, especially high school girls. That's just not wise at all. But there's still wisdom in you're going to build a relationship with somebody who's in high school. Involving their parents is probably almost always the right answer. Wouldn't you
absolutely.
agree? Yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
Well, and we've got to realize at every single moment, we are teaching something.
Yeah.
And even in that connection point with them, I really pray that young man today felt value. Not because Kyle Gray met with him.
Yeah.
But because the guy that is the youth pastor at his church valued his time. Can I tell you something that was really, really cool? Actually, because this kid is homeschooled.
Yeah.
Well, he does virtual school at home, but
sure,
he does virtual homeschool.
Yeah.
He virtually is doing homeschool. His mom walked him out to the car.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. And his mom shook my hand and said, thank you so much for doing this.
Oh, that's cool.
So if nothing else, I know that those parents are like, this is a big deal. Another one of the young men is actually the brother-in-law of one of the guys that works here. And I saw him at work the next day, and he goes, so you met with Caden? And I said, yeah. And he was like, he wouldn't shut up about it. Kyle Gregg, get over it, man. I was like, yeah, that's right.
That's so funny.
But I sat there and I thought, that's one of those things that just marked in my brain.
Yeah.
And I know that there's some of you out there probably thinking right now, I can't do that. Okay. This is not a biblical mandated thing.
Yeah.
I know some of you that are pastors, maybe you're sitting here going, man, it's been a while since I've gone out with any of the congregants of my church. I do think it would be a good idea.
Yeah.
To quote Andy Stanley, I don't believe in the Old Testament. No, sorry. I always have to say that. No, to quote Andy Stanley, do for one what you wish you could do for all.
Yeah, that's like that old story about the little girl who's throwing starfish back in the ocean.
Yeah.
They're like, you'll never get to all of them. She's like, well, I made a difference to that one.
It mattered to this one. Mattered to this one.
Yeah.
Well, but again, like Josh, you and I have our kids, our ministry kids, and you and I are kids that have been around ministry.
Sure.
In several different platforms.
Yeah.
And we've seen some people that take an investment or make an investment in others' lives or our lives.
Yeah.
And we've also seen people that their ministry is from the pulpit.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh,
and,
for sure.
And that's, I mean, what difference did it make when they started investing in you and wanting to get to know you?
Those are the people that I have the reason for even wanting to be in ministry at all. I mean, I remember my youth pastor growing up was very intentional about meeting with us, making us feel connected, giving us responsibilities and roles. And
Did he let you stack the chairs?
he let me stack chairs. Yeah, he's not in youth ministry anymore. But he had such an impact, and like the idea of being in youth ministry as just a youth leader, as a lay leader, has always been something that I've wanted to do as a result of being a part of that thing. And so, the guy who, fortunately for me, I've always had pastors in my life who they ministered from the pulpit, but they ministered in my life as well. I've had the luxury, I guess, of that not being the case, where it's someone who's just from the pulpit and then doesn't want to like actually interact in ministry. So I've always had a good example. I think that's why I feel so burdened to be a part of it. So yeah, I think especially that one-on-one, I had those with my youth pastor and also with Matt and stuff like that. Now, like I have good relationships in those one-on-one relationships. The thing now is, for me at least, and you guys some of you are probably out there in the same boat as me, is I see the value in it. I talk about the value of it, and I don't do it as much as I would like to. That's also figuring out that priority list. And again, there's a lot of you out there who are in that same boat as me, which is like, hey, I have 2 jobs. I have 2 kids, one wife,
Praise God.
one house,
Praise God.
That's the balance that we found. But a lot of you out there are like, boy, I'd love to be more involved and ask and have those meetings, and well, do the one, like
Right.
Kyle just said. And that's the challenge for me. I have one kid in the youth group right now who I'm like, okay, I want to start meeting with, and I meet with him fairly, often enough, but not as often as I'd like. And so I'm really making a point in my schedule. I'm like, okay, how can I make it more of a point to take him out and do things? And one of the ways that I did that is actually, it's funny, I actually paid him to hang out with me, which was I hired him to come help me clean my attic.
I was like, what?
No.
What?
No, I hired him to come help me clean my attic.
Yeah.
He's like, I want to make some money so I can go do this thing. And I was like, well, come help me clean my attic. I need to clean it out. The guy who lived there before left a bunch of junk up there. When we had some renovations done, they threw everything in all corners of the attic. Don't get me started on that one.
That's another session for another day.
Yeah, a whole other podcast. No, and I was like, I paid him some money, and I said, hey, you come help me clean up. And we just I talked about like, hey, how's school going? Like, what are some of the things that you're kind of struggling with relationships with either your parents or your friends, and just helping him work through some of that. And I don't think I've talked about this on the podcast before, but this is the same kid now who he's in middle school. And when we do prayer time, because I lead the middle school small group, when we do prayer time, I remember the one time he asked for prayer. He didn't ask for prayer often, but one of the things he asked for was, help me to pray that God would help me to have boldness to share the gospel with kids in my neighborhood. And I was like, that's so cool, because that's the thing I prayed for this morning. Like, that's a passion I have of like, how will I reach people with the gospel and be intentional to disciple them as well. And I have this 13-year-old who I've been meeting with, not on a regular basis, but I want to, and building toward, who has caught that same vision and says, I want to pray for that same thing. And so I'm encouraged. I hope you guys out there be intentional about that thing you really love, and start speaking it into the people, the teenagers that you can influence right there. Speak that value into them, and then make priority for one of them, that one starfish to throw back.
Well, and so today, I've been watching this kid, because at his other youth group, the one that he was at before, I know he played a pretty big role in the worship team.
Okay, yeah.
And I know that he's watching our worship team going, it's not bad, but I want to be involved. But it's also not bad, so maybe I don't need to get involved.
Sure.
But I'm like, no, this is where God has gifted you.
Yeah.
And so we talked about, how do we get him in? And and listen, as soon as I started to go down that road and said, hey, I don't think we do this. He showed up last night, because today is Thursday. He showed up last night at youth group. He said, hey, is the worship team practicing? He wanted to go and watch the way that they worship. And I thought, how awesome of this kid, instead of saying, I was on the worship team at my church. Now, he observed what they were doing. He was around.
Yeah.
And I said, hey, the door is wide open. What would you do?
Yeah.
Well, no, the door is wide open. What would you do? Well, we've done this. I said, that's great. Yeah. And I saw the joy of him now going, hey, this is how, because we don't want our kids just to show up and be there.
Yeah.
We want our kids to be involved. And no, every single one of your kids won't be involved throughout everything, every single time, but giving them that opportunity. So I would say, again, start with one.
Yeah,
Start
I
with
love that
one.
idea.
And again, I don't know when the last time is, gentlemen, that you've tried to meet with everybody in your small group for a lunch or a coffee. You should do it.
Yeah.
You should absolutely do it. Ladies, I don't know how long it's been since you've met with the girls in your small group, but do it. I don't know when the last time is that you took your youth pastor out and just spend some time with him, or hey, youth pastor, I don't know when's the last time you took your leaders out, but it is so pivotal. How many times do we read in scripture, whether it was Paul or Jesus, it was those one-on-one conversations, side discussions. It was those letters from Paul to Timothy.
Yeah.
Yes, it was to the church, but it was to Timothy that we today are holding on to.
Oh, absolutely. And I think there's one excuse that I hear often, which is I'm not in a spot where I can lead, or I don't know enough about the Bible where I can teach or disciple or have one-on-one meetings. And you have enough because all you have to do is be one step ahead and bring those people along with you. I often go, actually, the funniest, I brought this up last night, actually, because talking with the kids about like, hey, you can share the gospel because you know the gospel. You can disciple because you can draw them to the place you're at, because an unsafe person is a step behind you as a saved person. Draw them there, invite them to youth group, let them hear the gospel.
Can I tell you, I know part of the reason why I have the joy of going out with these leaders, these men, these guys, is because when I was in high school, a Young Life leader, I'm not asking you how you feel about Young Life. It was fantastic in my area. A Young Life leader, they were trying to start Young Life. His name was Brian. Brian, I don't remember your last name, but man, you made a massive difference in my life. And would take me out to McDonald's once or twice a month. And we would have breakfast. He would pray for my breakfast, and he would pay for my breakfast. And he just got to know me.
Yeah.
And he didn't ask me a lot of biblical questions, especially in the beginning, but he just got to know me. So some of you are sitting there going, well, I don't know a lot about the Bible. Well, get to know that person.
Yeah.
Sometimes my dad used to say this all the time, and it was not original with him, but people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care.
Yeah.
And so that's what I want to do for these young guys. We're starting somewhere. Now, I wanted to ask them some biblical questions.
Sure.
But here's what I've noticed, Josh. Everybody loves to tell their story. And so when I say, hey, where are you in your walk with Christ? And this kid said, here's a couple things that I'm battling through. I waited a couple minutes. I didn't pounce on him right away. Oh, you say you're struggling with this? Well, then tell me about that. I said, oh, okay, cool. That's good. And then I said, I walked back around and I said a couple minutes, hey, you said this a little while ago. How are you walking through that?
Yeah.
Hey, what are you reading in your quiet time right now?
Yeah.
Oh, that's so neat. And it honestly kind of took me back to that Dare to Share. I don't know if you remember all that time ago. If you haven't listened to the episode, go back with Jason Lamb as he talks about how to share Christ, the ask, admire, admit method to begin a gospel-centered conversation. That's all I do with these young guys. I ask them, hey, where are you in your walk with Christ? How are you? One of the questions I asked the young man today, how are you as a young man today combating temptation through your phone?
Yeah.
It wasn't the first question out of the gate.
No, yeah.
But you know what, can I tell you? He looked me dead in the eyes and he goes, there's sometimes I'm not doing too well.
Sure.
And I said, well, what are you doing? And he told me a couple of different things he did. And I said, man, I'm so proud of you.
Yeah,
That's awesome. I asked, I admired, and then I tried to say, hey, here's something I'm doing. And my admittance on that part was, I got a young man, Jude, that's growing up in my house that I want to make sure, thank you for those ideas.
Yeah.
I want to implement some of those in Jude's life.
Yeah. Someone was talking about how like they're so tired because they feel like they're raising their kids by themselves. We've built up an individualistic society, right? We have this individualistic society where it used to be, it takes a village, right? And that's not the case anymore. And so don't be afraid to lean in, and also don't be surprised when you meet opposition from parents who you're like, hey, I want to meet with the kid one-on-one. And maybe they're not from that kind of village mentality and they're from an individualistic society mentality. And they go, well, I really don't trust you with my kid. Find a way to be intentional, to honor the boundaries that they want. Don't give up on that kid.
So can I throw an idea at you?
Yeah.
So there was a young man that I started to meet with in Texas. I literally had just met this young man, but I saw him a number of times at the youth group.
Okay.
The funny thing was, you all know, or most of you all know, that I'm a big Superman fan. The night that I met him, he and his friends all had Superman shirts.
Oh, cool.
And so I made a comment to them. And then the next week when I saw him, I looked out for him. He didn't have a Superman shirt, loser. But I went and I said something to him. After about 2 months of connecting with him, I just noticed a desire in this kid to do whatever. And so you know what I did? Hey, do you guys have a ride home? No, normally my parent comes. I said, well, write your parent, let them know. They don't have to drive here. I'll drive. So I dropped all of his friends home and I dropped him off last. And I walked in the door and I met his parents.
Oh, cool.
And then a couple months after that, I said, hey, would you like to get together for discipleship? He said, what is that? And I said, so what I did was I went and I talked to his parents.
Yeah.
And they were like, what is that? So you know where I met with him for discipleship? At his house.
Nice.
We started to do that, and we started downstairs in the kitchen. And then after, like, I think it was like 1 week, the parents were like, if you guys want more privacy, why don't you go upstairs? I moved at the pace of his parents.
I love that.
To do that.
Yeah. And it's not, we're not trying to like do some vindictive thing. You're just trying to be intentional
Yeah.
of like meeting people where they are. And sometimes that means following boundaries that you don't understand because they're not from your culture, or your society, or your understanding.
My favorite part was his dad. I noticed his dad, like every once in a while, would just kind of walk through and would just kind of
just check.
or because we were upstairs. No, that's what I thought. I thought his dad was like, hey, let me check it. At the end of one of our discipleship meetings, we came downstairs and his dad said, all right, you said this. Can I ask you about this? His dad wanted to know. And it was really, really cool. There's probably 3 or 4 times towards the beginning, but then I've got a great relationship with his parents to this day. But there was one time that his mom sat in our discipleship meeting because she was like, hey, there was actually, I told her son a hard truth and it impacted him. And she was like, hey, can we talk about the way you said it and what you said and the way that it was communicated to her? And honestly, it was really, really cool. My agreement with the parents, with any kid that I meet with one-on-one on a consistent basis, is I sit down with them and I say, here's the deal. If they're in high school, I say, here's the deal. If I ever share anything that I don't think I ever will, but if I ever share anything that your family disagrees with, unless it's something biblical, I will lean to the way that your family wants to do it.
Yeah.
Like if I say, all right, man, at 10 o'clock, do a quiet time. And they're like, no, 10 o'clock, go to bed. Guess what? 10 o'clock, you go to bed. Guess what? Now, 9:30, you're doing your quiet time. Or 9 in the morning, you're doing the quiet time.
Yeah.
If it's something that I feel is a biblical, I will sit down and have a conversation with you and we'll figure out how we're going to talk about this. Yeah. And maybe it's a tertiary item that is like, we don't need to talk about that. But you got to do that.
Yeah. You just have to have the discretion and the willingness to have those conversations. And that's going to become less and less of a norm as our society progresses toward the inevitable cliff face that we're headed toward of just interaction with individuals. I just got to be intentional with that.
But we can make a difference now to continue that on. Because again, like I said, I know there was more than enough guys in my life that did that, which is why I do it today. Yeah. So
see, look, we brought it all back around.
Yeah, we did.
One-on-one meetings.
Absolutely.
What were you so worried about?
I don't know. I wasn't worried.
I wasn't worried. All right. Well, I think that's about it, right, Kyle?
Ladies and gentlemen, it has been Stacking Chairs, where we talk about all things youth ministry. I don't even remember how we end these things, Josh.
No, I say, make sure you follow us on Stacking Chairs Pod everywhere.
Wait, we have things on Stacking Chairs? Like where?
Yeah, on social media, Facebook, Instagram. Also, you can email us at stackingchairspod@wol.org. Ask us a question, talk to our producer, whatever.
We would love to hear from you guys. Any ideas you have, any topics you want us to talk about, any corrections you want to give to us.
What concert you want to play in the background next time.
That's right. But Josh,
most importantly, we
stack those chairs!